You know that I've been talking about the disgusting and immoral alliance between the United States and Saudi Arabia for years. It is a hypocritical and horrible alliance. It exists in part because of the shared goal of stability in the Middle East that both the US and Saudi Arabia have. But ideologically, there is little difference between the Wahhabist extremism of Saudi Arabia and the other radical Islamic sects in the Middle East that the US is actively fighting against. And the news about this alliance is getting even worse. Unless you felt that the Middle East needed even more weapons, the US State Department has approved the potential sale of more than 130 battle tanks, 20 armored recovery vehicles, and a whole bunch of other equipment worth about $1.15 billion to Saudi Arabia. Now, this could potentially still be vetoed by lawmakers. Rarely happens, basically does not happen. General Dynamics will be the principal contractor for the sale. This is just good old fashioned military industrial complex, Lewis, with the caveat, and a few people emailed me suggesting this recently. You know how we've talked about how the Pentagon has actually said recently, we don't need as many tanks as we've sort of committed to buying. Let's spend less money. You're giving us more equipment than we even need. Sort of fits in neatly to that messaging that now all of a sudden Saudi Arabia might be buying tanks from the United States, although that is just merely speculation. Are we confident, Lewis, that these tanks, these 130 tanks that will be sent to Saudi Arabia, will be used to defend democracy?
It won't really be defending democracy. It'll be defending Saudi Arabia and the oil fields, which we rely on. It's the idea, and from the statement released, was that this is all about stability. Saudi Arabia is an ally. They will
Right.
continue to be an ally. This is to help maintain stability. It's a good faith, all that. And I don't see this country falling apart in the foreseeable future, but it may, and at some other point it may, and then there will be this plethora of tanks and weapons that we sold being used against us potentially, and it's the same story over and over again.
When you sit down and think about this situation for what it is, it sort of will cause indigestion. We know that Saudi Arabia was actually tied to the 9/11 attacks. We invaded Iraq after those attacks, but continue to sell Saudi Arabia weapons. Interesting now that this happens both in terms of the timing regarding the tanks, but also in the midst of huge human rights abuses in Saudi Arabia that we've talked about time and again. Things are probably going to get way crazier in the Middle East soon as well over water. And you and I, Lewis, have been talking about this for a while. We've spoken to economists about it. The entire Middle East, basically with the exception of Israel, that has now actually started desalinating water. They've just made a huge advance in terms of distilling water, drinkable water from seawater, which was previously completely economically untenable. The entire Middle East, other than Israel, is going to be in really rough shape as far as water availability starting very soon. And I can only imagine that the natural resource wars could be pretty well served by having an extra 130 tanks.
No doubt. Yeah, Saudi Arabia is. I mean, the more capital you have, the better off you'll be when the water shortages happen. Another interesting thing about this sale is that does this mean anything about the looming threat of ISIS? Does this have anything to do with ISIS? Are they more of a threat to Saudi Arabia than we thought?
Right.
Or is this just business as usual?
Yeah, even though Saudi Arabia and ISIS actually share some social beliefs, they don't like each other and have declared war. ISIS has declared war on Saudi Arabia, or vice versa, or maybe both. Now I don't remember, but be that as it may, they don't like each other. That we know.